Hey, we're on again talking with Gary about his new book. Now, if you see this a couple years from now, it won't be quite new, but new as we record Game of Pulpits, the seven voices vying for the kingdom. And last episode, we talked about the first voice, which was the redesigner's voice. And one of the things you came about in the order was that was your first one. You came up with number two was this voice. Why don't you talk about this voice? And I won't even give it away. I'll let you do that. And why did you lead with the redesigner voice? You already talked about that. But secondly, why did you put the second voice in, and what is that?
Yeah, this the second voice is the Pentecostal Wave. Okay, so Pentecostal Wave, and part of the reason why I chose to put the Pentecostal charismatic tradition, the side of the church and the voice for championing the move of the Spirit. Why I put this here partly is because of the global growth of Pentecostalism. Yeah, the fastest growing movement on the globe. Okay, the Pentecostal movement, and fast growing in America. Not the largest denominational group. There's others who are larger. But the Assemblies of God have, from the religion census numbers, have grown and are expanding. One of the writers that I read, and I read multiple writers here, but yeah, Jack Hayford wrote this book, the Charismatic Century, and so. What is he doing? He's saying, wow, look at what has happened in the century with the entire charismatic movement. And so some of it is that. Now, I chose not to put them first, partly because I wanted to, with the redesigners, I wanted to really address and speak to everybody. Okay. So I wanted to speak to, redesigners is really looking at the existing church, kind of what's happening with our churches. And so it includes everybody and ask the questions that, are we to kind of hold the line with the status quo, or are we to innovate and to change and kind of reform and redesign and reinvent ourselves, so redesigners are really pertinent to everyone. But I have to say this about writing this particular chapter. It's not just written to Pentecostals or charismatics. Now, Pentecostals are not always going to use the term Pentecostal. I use it as an umbrella term. There's three different branches, of it. We've got the early Pentecostals, and we have then the charismatics. Okay, who come later, Chuck Smith and then we've got John Wimber's third wave. And so we've got what we have is these three different kind of waves, of this move of the Spirit. What I did want to say is that don't skip that chapter. Don't skip that chapter, because when we're taking a look at some of these different kind of prominent voices that are out there who are vying for the kingdom, and hey, we've got the answer, this is the answer, and they're championing something. I just think as we open it up and we take a look at it, there's really something for all of us to learn. And in the writing there, my goodness gracious, I'm kind of walking into a lot of things that, whether you believe in the gifts for today or not, whether you're, a cessationist or a continuationist, this continuationism idea of the gifts and everything, wherever you stand, there's a lot to glean from that chapter. Biblically, there's a lot to look at. And I think, I say in Game of Pulpits, we need to be willing to learn from others and to look, outside of our lane, and to glean, and to be willing to light our torch from another's flame. And so, with Pentecostal, I use wave. We could use fire here as a symbol, as the symbol in the book, fire, for the tongues of fire that we see in Acts 2. But it's, yeah, it's a very interesting examination. My editor actually loved this chapter. And so he thought this was really a deep, way to kind of go into it and honoring, this voice, honoring them and esteeming them, but also some critique, and taking kind of a deeper look at some of the things that can kind of be outflows of the strengths. And so and that's what I see. I see some strengths, and I do see some strengths for the churches to emulate. Though you're not necessarily going to become Pentecostal or necessarily charismatic, but wouldn't we all agree that we have a supernatural faith, right? I mean, we are, but believers, the Holy Spirit, the power of the Spirit is within us. And there is a supernatural aspect to that, and the fruit of the Spirit, and the work of God, the prompting of God, the leading of God. And so all of that, I mean, in some ways, in some ways, I mean, don't we all want to be that, right? Don't we all want to be someone, who is spirit led? And so, so there's some things, but I am working with Pentecostal groups. I, was invited to do some training for a Pentecostal group in Texas. And, one of my thoughts about them is that, if they had an app, a music app or something, or an app on your phone, there's kind of like a playlist, and with them, and where sometimes, as believers out there, in churches, our lives can look a little bit black and white. We're seeing kind of, it looks a little bit black and white. And I think, the Pentecostals, the charismatics, tend to see this world in bright, vibrant, living color, in their expectancy of what God can do in this world, the way God can intervene, the way God is active. And there's something really powerful and beautiful about that. And so that reading, I think, is really rich. And of course, I have a pretty strong critique in that as well. I'm sure it doesn't fit everybody within the Pentecostal branch. It won't line up with everybody, but it's a general observation that I've made, again, yeah, as I'm training and bumping up against others. So that's there too. And but I've seen some things that I think I haven't liked, and so I wade into that, and I walk into that. And so anyways, though, yeah, I hope that
Well,
answers
that's the
that one.
second voice, which is the Pentecostal wave. So we get to read let me try to encapsulate this really quick. And if I do this well, tell me if I've done it well. The redesigner's voice is this overarching uh, view of what we're doing in churches, leaders, all of them in any branch. What do we do to do better? What do we do to
Yes. Yeah.
to take on the king, take on the kingdom work? And the second voice, because it is the largest growing wave or um, movement, we can't dismiss that if we're not in that wave, because there's so much there that we can glean from it, as I think you posit in the book. But there's also some challenges, like anything else, like any other, because we're human
Sure.
and
Sure.
none of us see the whole picture.
Yeah.
Would that be a good way to
Yeah,
kind of encapsulate the
yeah,
two?
yeah. And I think there's some aspects of growth that are just going to apply to every group, that, and but I think that there's peculiarities, and there's some distinctiveness, and I think how a group could excel even further, even more. And so part of me is hoping that the critique side of that chapter would actually get to that, because we're all in this kingdom thing together. We want the kingdom uh, of God to win. We want the name of Jesus to be glorified. We want to reach more people in the culture. And so, yeah, thematic throughout Game of Pulpits is my heart and my desire to see the expansion of the gospel go as wide as it possibly can. I'm not trying to box voices into something they're not. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to, raise, the strengths inside those voices, maybe shore up some weaknesses that are there, some blind spots that are there. But it is a conversation. I don't always know if readers or the leaders, the mission-minded members who read this are, you don't always know if people will be able to hear what you're saying and be able to run forward with it and be able to, do it. But I definitely make an attempt to address particular areas. And then I also try to give practical helps as well and development. So yes, yeah.
Well, hey, go out if you're a leader, get his book, uh, Game of Pulpits, The Seven Voices Vying for the Kingdom. Thanks, Gary.